All right, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Toon podcast. My name is Craig. I am joined by Mark down in a slightly sweaty Brisbane. How are you doing, mate?
Well, it's been weird. It's like we finally had the rain hit, and it's still warm and humid, but now it's raining as well. So, yeah, can't quite win it down here. But I'm doing okay. I'm feeling good. I'm kind of refreshed from the lack of Newcastle games to get up early in the morning for. So hopefully that kind of like refreshes our batteries a little bit, ready for the next haul of games, which I don't think is going to be fairly easy on us.
No, it never is for Newcastle United, and especially us here being on the other side of the world, getting up at stupid o'clock 2-3 times a week now with European competition in full flow. But
Yeah.
we wouldn't do it otherwise if we didn't love it. Just before we do get cracking on with this podcast, if you don't already, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Give us a 5-star review on the audio channels if that's how you do get your content from us. And if you don't already, just follow us on social media, whether it be Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it these days, Facebook and Instagram. We are on all of the major socials. Give us a like, give us a thumbs up, give us a comment on there, and we do always try to follow everyone back if we can. But what we're going to talk about today is the current crop of injuries that are plaguing the Newcastle United squad, bit of squad depth, and a little bit of on transfers as well, with the January transfer window fast approaching. There's going to be a few players in and out, hopefully, a bit more quality added to the team, which at this minute in time is vastly needed. But we're going to kick things off with injuries, Mark. Now, have you ever known a team, let alone a Newcastle team, to be ravaged by so many injuries over a short space of time?
I think we've had injury crises in the past before. It's not like this is really new territory for us. I mean, I remember when, and again, it sort of coincided with the last European campaign for us in Champions League at least. I remember us having a fair few injuries when Sir Bobby was here as well. Obviously, we had like Kieran Dyer, who was made of glass and had hamstrings like wet paper tissue. But Woodgate was always out. We had players, but that were always injured. So you kind of factored that in almost. That a few of them are always going to be missing. No, look, I think it's been excessive this time. I think the fact remains though is that, and I'm sure we'll cover this, but none of them are real. We're starting to see some soft tissue injuries, but when we've had just bad luck as well. When Matty Target sort of like just reaches for a ball in the first 2 minutes of a game, he's pulled his hamstring and he's out for 3 months, 4 months or whatever. But Harvey Barnes's foot injury, we've got like just random groin and knee injuries happened, and like I mean Dan Burn fell on his back. He's out for a few months. Elliot Anderson woke up awkwardly and he's out for a few months with a sort of stress fracture in his back or something. So yeah, it's been this like litany of just random freak occurrences and training ground incidents and just generally piss poor bad luck. There's not much more we can say about it, but no, it's been absolutely atrocious. The one thing I will say though is if you've seen any of the some of the lists of who's actually injured in all the Premier League teams, we aren't actually the only ones.
No.
It's like the whole league is just littered with injuries, and I think the one thing that we probably need to do in January when we start talking about that is go and hire West Ham's coach, training staff, and their medical team, because they're the only ones that don't seem to have loads of injuries.
I wonder if they've got the old Steve Bruce training method of minimum effort, maximum reward. That seems to be the case for them, because they're keeping everybody fit. Or the majority of the squad anyway. But just to give a quick heads up of who is actually injured right now, one or two of these may be on the cusp of return or borderline. But we've got Jacob Murphy, shoulder injury, Dan Burn, lower back injury, Elliot Anderson, lower back injury, Harvey Barnes, foot injury, Sven Botman, knee injury, Callum Wilson, thigh injury, Almiron, thigh injury, Isak, groin, hip, pelvic injury. So that one's very, very obscure in terms of where that injury is. Manquillo, no idea how he's got injured. I don't think I've seen him kick a ball in about 12 months. Groin, hip, pelvic injury again. Matty Target with a thigh injury. Tonali has been all suspended. And for the Chelsea game this weekend coming up, which we'll do a separate pod for, Lewis Hall is is ineligible as he can't play for his parent club, and also Sean Longstaff is also a doubt as well, as he seemed to take a nasty knock in the Bournemouth game. I don't know if you remember watching that game live. He went down and there was a loud shriek from him. And I just thought, oh, Jesus Christ, there we go. He snapped his ankle or whatever it was going to be. Luckily, I think he managed to continue on with the game, if memory serves me correctly.
Yeah.
Those list of players there, you don't mind injuries coming into the game because that's all part and parcel of the game itself. But when you've got effectively, minus a goalkeeper, an entire starting 11 out, that has to have a negative impact on performances, whether it be just the quality or just the overall stamina in which the team can perform at the high standard we set ourselves.
Well, I said this on social media the other day that people were sort of saying like everyone's got injuries and look at all in the injury list, and there was jokes going around about that. It was, oh well, that's what happens when you play an extra 10 minutes a game with all the new time adding on issues that we're going through. But it's probably twofold for me. One of them is, yes, we're missing absolute quality, and as I said on the social media post, was it's not just about how many injuries we've got; it's who we've got injured. It's like all like apart from probably Manquillo, it's all first team players that would be playing regular football for us. So that takes out the quality of those sorts of players. Now, obviously, we were without Bruno for the Bournemouth game because of suspension, but he's happily back. But the other side of the coin for me, though, is it gives Eddie Howe limited options off the bench. And so what you end up with is probably what we saw with Miggy, in that players have to play more minutes, they have to play more games, and then they start picking up muscle injuries because they're just fatigued. So as much as we've been on about all of the the freak occurrences and random injuries that don't really kind of it's just bad luck, we are starting to see some more of those kind of little muscle strains and hamstrings, and that to me kind of points out that we're running on empty, and we've got players that are probably due for a rest. And I think Miggy's the prime example of that. He runs around like a headless chook at the best of times, but even the Energizer Bunny needs new batteries now and again. So he's one of those players where I think he was due for a rest. Matty Targett got injured, so he had to come off the bench for 2 minutes. You got a break for 2 minutes. And then he's like obviously sort of suffered again just from and it is probably just too much workload. So there is those two sides to the injury list. It's who we're missing, but it's also how it's affecting the players that are actually playing for us.
Yeah, and going back to the Bournemouth game as well, when you've got to take a 17-year-old off in Lewis Miley and replace him with an 18-year-old Ben Parkinson, you are at the bare bones of your squad. I mean, Miley, as we know, he is definitely a player for the future, and he showed some brilliant touches in the Bournemouth game, but he's just not ready yet. Yeah, he was. Yeah, he was. I don't think he's got a full 90 minutes in the Premier League in him yet. I don't think he's quite got that in his tank. That will come. But when you are taking 17-year-olds off to bring on 18-year-olds to give another one their Premier League debut and so on, the squad is stretched so thin. And I'm going to touch a little bit on
bringing Matt Ritchie off the bench as well. I think that sets the bar. That pretty much states how bad we are at the moment. Matt Ritchie getting game time, but I mean, we all wanted to see more of Lewis Miley, but not under these circumstances.
No, definitely not. And I think having better players around him, the likes of Bruno, whatever, around Miley is just going to make Miley the better player as well. Unfortunately, he hasn't had a chance to play with Bruno much, but that in time will come. But after that Bournemouth game, I'm just going to touch on this slightly. There was a little bit of an altercation between Trips and that fan. Now, the fan has come out and apologised. Everything is now all rosy. Where do you see this from the fans' point of view? And then where do you see that from Trips' point of view?
So I did the pod with Dimmy as the review pod for that match, and we mentioned it on that as well. Look, I have no problems with the fan given his quick turnaround in terms of his apology, but I still maintain the same outlook. He's probably had a few too many bevies leading up to the game. It was a late kickoff, if you remember, so he's probably been out on the lash all day. Probably had a bit of a skinful. We didn't play well. No one's hiding behind the fact that we should have won it or whatever. It's like we were poor. And we deserve that. The fans deserve to feel disappointed. The players were clearly disappointed. Having a pop at players, though, I feel was probably crossing the line, especially given given how much they have done for the club, and especially players like Trippier, who probably could have had his pick of clubs when he left Spain. He's joined the project along with a few of the other players. They've given their all. They've clawed us up the Premier League. They've clawed us into the top half. They've managed to get us into the Champions League. And yeah, look, things are going badly, but there's reasons for it. It's not like this has just come out of the blue. It's like we've got this horrendous injury record. We're playing games like left, right, and center. We're never getting a rest. And as I pointed out to Dimmy as well, I think it was Lee I did the podcast with. If I remember correctly, I think I pointed out that when we're playing away in Europe, when we're playing in the Champions League, we always seem to have an away game straight away. But the next Premier League game is always an away game. That can't be easy for the players, for the club. And I wonder if that is actually affecting some of the injury issues as well, whereby players are not able to play week in, week out. They're playing week in, week out, but they're not able to train properly between those games anymore. So they're not getting that proper rest and recovery. They're not getting the build up to a game. And I actually wonder whether or not something like, when you see Eddie Howe coming out against Man United and we're winning quite comfortably in the League Cup, and he brings Wilson on and he brings Bruno on, and everyone was questioning that. He basically said, well, look, we were comfortable and I wanted to use it as a bit of a training session for them because we're not able to train properly during the week. Now that was a properly unintentional diss of Man United by Eddie Howe, and I loved it. But it also showcases the situation that we're in at the moment, where we're just not getting that training time. So yeah, I mean, for me, the players are getting injured, but there's different ways and means that they're getting injured in that, and having fans pop at them when they're clearly giving their all and they're pushing through a lot of barriers at the moment. And the players would have been gutted, but to have the fans on their back after a couple of games that don't go their way. Now, bearing in mind that was our first away game that we lost all season, wasn't it?
We lost at City,
right? But it was the first loss we'd had for a while in terms of the league.
In 7 or 8 games, something like that. Yeah.
So it's not like it's the massive crisis that it was sort of somehow being made out to be. If you have a look at we're kind of in the top 7-ish teams, like we're pushing for the top 6 again. We're still in the League Cup. We're bottom of the group now in the Champions League, but we've still got more points than some second place teams in the Champions League this year in other groups. We're not exactly doing badly, given all of the caveats that we just talked about in terms of injuries and lack of personnel, lack of quality. So yeah, for me, I think the fans are out of order, and I think there was a few on social media that were probably a bit over the top as well in terms of their criticism. And it's just a shame that I'm not expecting everyone to accept mediocrity. It's fine to be disappointed because that game was very disappointing, but at the same time, don't go off at the players. Appreciate what they've done, what they're doing, and understand the circumstances. It's like you can't just take things out of context for that game. Yes, it was only Bournemouth, but we were a free hit to Bournemouth. You could tell that from the off. They came out, they were at us from minute one. And for me, that was like them just throwing everything at us, and we were depleted, and they knew it. We were there for the taking, and they've dominated us in the ways we probably did to other teams in our relegation scrap season. So yeah, sorry, I've waffled a bit, but that was a bit of a that was a harsh thing to see, having fans pop at the players.
It is.
I feel bad. I understand why Trippier has gone over to them, and I think like Lee said at the end of the last review pod, we don't want to feel like Eddie Howe, the players or anything like that, have to come out and apologize. We, like most rational fans, and even the fans in the light of day after that game who were disappointed and giving it large. This is the problem with social media and in general, just having that instant reaction. You're disappointed. You unleash. You kind of say things you don't mean. As I said, fair play to the fan for apologizing straight away. But there's that sense of, I don't want players to feel like they have to come out and defend themselves all the time. They have to make apologies every time we lose a game. We know that they're giving their all. We know they don't want to lose a game. We can see the passion. Just keep doing what you're doing, and you've got everyone's support.
Yeah. And one of the things I want to touch on as well regarding the injuries, and this is where the next 2-3 years is going to be critical, because as we get into European competition, hopefully on a regular basis, moving away from Darsley Park to a new world-class training facility, which all the big clubs in the world have. You look at PSG, Man City, Arsenal, they've got a cracking one. They have all got world-class training facilities. Their injury list is to a relative minimum, effectively. But then if you look at a team like Man United, they've got the same amount of injured players as we have. And there's so much talk of their training centre is dilapidated, it's fallen down, it's not what it used to be. Now, yes, the consortium have spent a shit ton of money in improving Darsley Park, but it's still the same training ground, which is small, it's cramped, it's not fit for a team that needs to be playing effectively 3 games every 7 or 8 days or something like that, whatever it may be. Yeah. So I think moving away to a better training ground when that does eventually happen, albeit it could be, as mentioned before, another 2-3 years away. Better training facilities, more space to do what we need to do, better recovery rooms, recovery time, that sort of thing. And these are the other little steps, which I think will make a massive difference in preventing these niggling injuries, these long-term injuries, and also possibly some of these freak injuries that may just go under the radar and they don't realize are actually injured till they step out onto the pitch. And I don't even know if a location for a training ground has been sourced yet. There was talk of being somewhere up in Gosforth, I think. I don't know if you've heard anything on that on social media lately.
No, I think it all kind of like was a big talking point when the new owners took over, and we were going to be building a new stadium and building a new training ground, and there was that that Saudi training sports center or something that was doing the rounds about how great that was going to be. Oh, imagine if we've got something like this, and then it's just gone very hush hush. So, look, I think their focus has been on getting the team sorted, getting the staff sorted, because we hit Europe probably too early, I think, for their overall plans. I think we are probably a year or two ahead of schedule at the moment. So yeah, look, maybe that's just gone on the back burner for the moment while we start planning for stadium expansions and all the rest of it, because that seems to be the things that are talked about a lot more now. So yeah, look, hopefully it's still on the agenda. I agree 100% that a new training complex with, you know, those state-of-the-art training facilities that all the sports scientists can get their teeth into, you know, it certainly can't hurt.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to move across from the negative side of the injuries now to 2 possible positive ones, with the return of Big Dog, Alexander Isak. Eddie said in a few press conferences a while back that he's not expected to return until after the international break. The international break finishes this weekend with the return of the Premier League, thank God. And having Isak back just as Wilson goes off on however long of a injury absence it's going to be. I think there's talk of a few weeks for him. Not too sure on that one. We will see when Eddie gives his presser this Friday. But having Big Dog come back, that's got to have some type of boost for the team. Because as good as Gordon can be playing up top, he's not a natural centre forward, but Isak definitely is.
For me, Gordon out wide is where you want him to play. It's where he's been playing. It's where he's been most effective. He can threaten teams out wide. He can cut in. He can go onto the opposite flank if he needs to. I just think you lose so much playing him through the middles, and I'm not sure we have the same sort of quality to come in at the moment because of all the rest of the injuries. So losing that from Gordon in terms of that threat out wide, I think is a big loss. So to have him back out there, big dog through the middle, that's huge. That is a huge thing. It is getting to the point where, like, let's be honest here, none of us believe a word that comes out of Eddie Howe's mouth in terms of injuries in the presses anymore. This player is going to be out for months and months, and then they're on the bench the next day, and it's just like, yeah, okay, fair enough. I get the fact that you don't want to give anything away, and you don't want the opposition to know like who's playing and that, but yeah, I think we're all clued into it now. Nobody's really taking him seriously. It makes sense to have Isak not fit as such in inverted commas, because you don't want him to then go, oh, I've played one game, so then Sweden go, well, if you're fit you can come and play for us, and then he goes away and gets another injury while he's away because he's having to travel a bit more. So keep him local, keep him training, keep him in the recovery sort of phase, and then if we can get 60 minutes out of him and he's effective, we can hopefully try and kill the game off early against Chelsea, and then just shore things up with him off sitting on the bench for the rest of the game. He's been a huge miss though, yeah, for sure, and especially now that Wilson's crocked once more. The whole we only need two strikers philosophy at the beginning of the season coming back to bite us in the ass a little bit, but yeah, we'll take it on the chin and be thankful that big dog's back.
Another potential returning injury is Miggy Almiron, who limped off against Bournemouth. Doesn't look as though his injury is as bad as feared, thank God. So hopefully he does make a return this weekend. Whether he plays the full 90 minutes, whether he starts, remains to be seen. Hopefully he is just part of the squad and he isn't actually out. But again, like I say, Eddie keeps everything close to his chest in terms of who is and who isn't available. And another name that is potentially on the cusp of returning as well, and a name that probably most Newcastle fans have already forgotten about because he's been away for a while, Harvey Barnes. He's a player who is very impactful, as we've seen in his Leicester days. His Newcastle career has already hit a bit of a speed bump with this weird foot injury he got in the Sheffield United game. But he's back running on grass, according to Eddie. He's kicking a ball again. So hopefully it's just a case of building up his fitness. And then the difference in terms of approach and attack from him and Gordon out on the left. They're both going to give the same results, but the way they approach their game is a lot different. Is he a player you're looking forward to seeing returning?
Yeah, for sure. I thought he looked really good against Aston Villa. Got his goal, took it well, caused some problems down there. Didn't seem to really link up as well as he probably wanted to, which I thought at the time was probably just going to need game time. As we know, it didn't last very long before he got his injury. As I said, it was like total freak injury. He's gone to push off and something's kind of like clicked, and the next thing you know, he's got. I don't know if he's had a moon boot on or anything like that, but it looks like it's been this bone injury in his foot, which we all know from all the kerfuffle made about Wayne Rooney and his metatarsal injuries and stuff. It's a long one to heal up from. So luckily it doesn't look like it's been like the full blown broken bone in his foot, but certainly missed him. But I think we've missed the opportunity for him to settle in as well, more than anything, where he thrives on that kind of 1-2 move down the left-hand side in the same way that Bruno kind of feeds in Miggy quite often. Miggy, Bruno, Trippier kind of have that little triangles and sort of pass through balls and little 1-2 moves and stuff like that going. I was really hoping that we would see Barnes get that going with Bruno or with Tonali. Obviously, Tonali's not going to be around trying it for a while. So, hopefully Bruno or Joe Linton can kind of get that magic happening on the left-hand side once he gets in. Gordon still providing the pace down there. Miggy, hopefully he's fit, playing on the right. It's finally some good news. That's all we can say. And yes, it's long overdue.
It really, really is, isn't it? But we're going to leave that the injuries on the back burner now. And going to move on to the squad itself and just some of the key players who are missing that we've already mentioned. So like Botman, Wilson, Isak. They're all key players who form the spine of our squad effectively. But some of the not so regular players, so you've got the likes of Matt Ritchie, you've got Mark Gillespie, who I think has only ever made one appearance for the first team squad, and that was in a cup game in which we lost, I think. Then you've got Javier Manquillo, who I can't remember the last time I've seen him kick a ball in anger.
No.
I don't even think he played that much in terms of preseason. These are all players who they are taking up a squad space. If they were to potentially move on in January, is that something that you would be a part of if you knew that they are going to be replaced with younger, fresher, more hungry talent? Or would you like to keep some of them around for their experience?
I've got a soft spot for Matt Ritchie just because he is, by all accounts, in that like in a leadership group with Dan Burn and Lascelles and everyone in the dressing room. And I don't think that we can really discount how important that is for us still. We aren't at the levels yet where quality will shine out no matter what. We do still need that team spirit to like pull us through on occasion. I think if we can keep that for as long as we can, then I think it will benefit us long term as well. What I'd for players like Manquillo, it's hard to justify keeping both him and Kraft around. I think it's one or the other with those two. Like we can't have four right backs on the squad. It's just not feasible. Now I think Kraft has proved that he can play at a centre half position if he needs to. Trippier is going to have a rest at some point, so you'd like to think that Livramento gets a game. He's looked plenty good enough, but maybe it gets to the point where just out of necessity we have to play Trippier on the left, Livramento on the right. Hall obviously not fit for Chelsea, but seems to be getting used in fits and starts, not really getting his full game time at the moment. I think that's just a matter of he needs to learn the game plan and sort of keep progressing his own career. But there's plenty of peripheral players that I just don't see why we would keep them around. Certainly with Gillespie, I don't think you can have 4 keepers in the squad either. The difference is, and I firmly believe that Gillespie was literally kept in just to fulfill the homegrown talent or the local quota for the Champions League squad. I'm pretty sure that's all he was around for.
Right.
And so, yeah, if you're kind of going down that route, then we need to really be able to say, well, look, we've got Lewis Miley, we've got maybe whoever else comes through. That needs to be almost a priority for us, so that we can start to fill those positions up with younger players. Look, in terms of the players that I do want to go out the door, I want to see somebody go out because I know that we need some younger players to come in. Who that is, I don't know, but we definitely need to sort of trim the fat, so to speak.
There is one other player who he's only been used in the cup competition so far this season, and that is Martin Dubravka. Now, do you think he's going to want to move away before his career does come to an end? Or do you think he just happy enough, sat on the bench, picking up his paycheck, play the odd game every month or so in the League Cup, and hopefully maybe pick up another League Cup winners medal this time for the correct team, effectively? I can see why you would want to move. I think that's the reason why he went on loan to Manchester United last season, but obviously it never worked out for him. But he's in his 30s now, which, to be honest, 32, 33, I think he is. That's not the tail end of your career as a footballer anymore.
Not for a goalkeeper, certainly.
No, and he's definitely a quality goalkeeper, whether you do a job still in the Premier League or whether he moves overseas. But he's a player, he'd bring in a small amount of funds, but he would free up that wage bill as well. I'd imagine he's on an okay wage, especially compared to Gillespie. Gillespie's probably getting the same amount of money as somebody on the dole. He's just happy to be part of the squad and have some friends. But yeah, Dubravka could be somebody that I see move away. The number 2 spot then gets filled in by Karius, who is possibly going to be away in the summer anyway. Yeah. So that could free up that one there. And it also brings down that average age of the squad as well, which is something that we've needed to trim for a while too. If Dubravka was to leave in January, would you be okay with Karius taking that number 2 role?
Pretty much, as long as nothing happens to Nick Pope, touch wood, then I think you're kind of looking at someone coming in for cup games, and that's pretty much it. Because I think Nick Pope's going to be number 1 as long as he's fit and raring to go. He's going to play all the Premier League games. I think we're pretty much in agreement with that. I just don't see that. The problem with Dubravka is he's going to be on decent wages. He's old, so is a club in Europe that maybe just wants him as a backup keeper? Is he going to go anywhere as a first choice keeper that can afford him, or who doesn't have better already? Either they can afford to pay a fee, but can they afford to pay his wages? And that's the key for me. Is like we may end up having to take a hit on him just to get rid of that squad position, to free that squad position up. The other thing, the other player obviously is Dummett, who has done well when he's come in on the cup games, I have to say. But again, he's one of those players where if you're getting to the point where he's playing in the Premier League games, then you've got to start to worry. But he's one of the local homegrown players, and he fills that quota for the Champions League squad. So that's been our big Achilles heel, I think, in terms of squad development. Obviously, financial fair play. Cheers, Big Six. But we've got that sort of problem whereby we need to fill this quota, and building a squad is something that we've had to do pretty quickly, but we haven't had a chance to kind of bring those other players through yet. So, time will tell how it goes, but I think something needs to happen, preferably in January, but definitely in the summer.
So the January transfer window is fast approaching. We've just had a brief chat on players who we probably wouldn't mind seeing moving on if it was for the better of both the club and the player itself. Now, in terms of improving the squad, we're not going to really go through any names of who we'd like to bring in or anything, because that to me just seems a bit clickbaity, and that's not what this channel is about. We try to avoid anything like that. There are names already linked with Newcastle. I think there was names linked with Newcastle the day the transfer window shut. It's just a never-ending story with us now, because we have the Saudi owners. We have got the richest owners in world football, so we're going to spend. That's obviously not the case. As you mentioned before, the Big Six brought in FFP to try and eliminate progress of other clubs. And FFP has just bit Everton on the arse big time. Your thoughts on that? Do you think, just very briefly, do you think the 10-point deduction was harsh, justified? Or do you think it was a case of Premier League just saying, this is a warning to everybody else?
I think they've used, I think the Premier League have definitely used Everton as a marker, just to kind of lay down that gauntlet and say, right, you see what's going to happen if you so much as blink out of place, we're going to nail you. And I know Jack keeps taking the piss out of me because I'm a bit paranoid about Newcastle these days, but it's hard to think that it's not kind of a little nod in the direction of Newcastle saying, well, you know what, you guys are borderline. If you step over the mark, we're going to nail you too, and then all of your work's going to be undone, and you're going to lose all your players. And it's hard not to think like that, given how many rule changes we have seen. Specifically directed at Newcastle United, and they haven't been, but we all know they have. In terms of, is it a harsh penalty? I think they got away with a couple of points that they weren't docked, that they were potentially allowed to be docked, so it's not as bad as it potentially was. But obviously the big thing hanging over is yes, they've broken the rules, so I have no problem with them getting a punishment. It's taken a while for it to sort of, this has been like, what, 2-3 seasons now that we've heard this financial irregularities, and they've broken the financial fair play rules, and we all know that they fudged the numbers a little bit during COVID to try and alleviate some of that, but they haven't managed to alleviate all of it. It's the fans that are going to suffer for an owner being a dick, and it's the usual issues with most football clubs. Is the fans are the ones that support them, the fans are the ones that suffer when anything goes wrong, and the owners are the one that make all the problems. So it is harsh on the fans, and as much as I don't like Everton as a club and the fans, it is harsh, and I do feel a little bit sorry for them, especially when you look at Man City and how many charges they've got hanging over their heads. And now you've got Chelsea thrown in the mix as well, and there's been some backdoor payments and some shonky dealings with both of those clubs. And is this a marker to say, well, we're going to really kind of come down hard on those two? Or is it literally just, well, don't do it again, boys. This is the punishment if you do, but we're just going to let you two off because you're the Big Six and we don't want you to escape to a new Super League. That to me is the big thing. It's not so much what they've done with Everton, it's how they come down on Man City and Chelsea.
Very valid point. So, transfer window coming up. 3 areas of the pitch you think we need reinforcements in. I'll go with my 3 first. One, definitely a centre back. I think that is something that needs to be addressed. Botman's long-term injury and Shaw going down every 30 minutes because it looks like he's cracked something or whatever. And right wing is another option. Murphy is out for X amount of time. Miggy's picked up niggling injuries. But crucially, a third striker. So an out-and-out third striker, a young lad who can come in, learn from both Isak and Wilson, who's not expected to play every game, not even make an appearance or whatever on the bench, someone who can come in through when needed and just put in a shift. I think those are the 3 areas I would like to see us improve in January. Your 3 areas, Mark?
Pretty much the same. I mean, obviously I'd love for us to get a loan move from a Saudi club, just to watch the implosion and the meltdowns that would happen. And there's talk that if they do go for that there's actually legal ramifications if the Premier League try to stop it as well. So there's a little bit of talk rumbling around that. MSI Douglas and his little tidbits of, well, they could challenge this on a legal front if they do stop them. So that'll be interesting. So watch this space on that one. I don't think it'll happen. I think it's probably smokescreen, like some of the other Dan Ashworth dealings. He's not shy of throwing a bit of a red herring in the mix and getting people diverted elsewhere while they start looking around at other players, and we end up with Tonali instead of whoever else they went over to Italy for. Obviously that one didn't work out too well, but it was still a good bit of business, let's be honest. Nobody knew he was a little bit of a gambler and had some issues hanging over his head, so you can't really hold that against the club, against our club at least anyway. Look, definitely a striker. I think we're painfully short there. My big thing with that is, yes, okay, not many clubs have 3 out-and-out centre forwards. So it would be nice if they could be a little bit flexible, if they could drop deep into like maybe a link-up role or play wide right or wide left or something like that. But we've been shown time and time again, Callum Wilson cannot play a 38-game season, let alone when we're in Europe and cup games and things like that. So if you only have those 2, you're effectively relying on Isak being fit all the time, because if he goes down, then Wilson has to play too many games and then Wilson gets croaked. And we've already seen that, Isak's not exactly set in stone in terms of his injury record either at the moment, so that is a little bit of a worry. Well, it's a lot of a worry to me. So yeah, definitely centre forward, someone who's a little bit sort of young, hungry to prove themselves. And I know we're not clickbaity. I know there's been a lot of issues with Ekitike. That's been mentioned again, but look, I'm at the point, if Eddie Howe turns around and says, yes, I want this player, I'm happy to let him have whoever the hell he wants. He's earned that right to make his first cock up, and he's yet to do it. Sandro Tonali was a great signing with a relatively good price that just hasn't worked out because of non-footballing reasons. Out of the club's control. That was not on Eddie Howe in terms of, I haven't been able to manage this player. So for me, yeah, get a young striker in. Ekitike does fit the bill. But whether or not he would come with his tail between his legs almost to say, well, yeah, you know what, I should have come in the first place. Whether or not his attitude's right, I don't know. But I'm willing to give him a chance. If, we've seen it with Ivan Toney. Ivan Toney was not a good player at Newcastle. He needed that kick up the arse to drop down a league so that he would go, well, you know what, this is my chance. I need to prove myself. And he's gone and done it. He's proven himself. I would love for us to get him back, but it's just going to cost a fortune. And for that amount of money, you're bringing someone in who's got to be first choice striker. And that's going to be tough to sell with Isak and Wilson already here. Second position for me, centre half as well. I think maybe someone who could play, either side of the back 2. We need that flexibility. As you said, look, Shah's another head injury awaiting a sort of a CAT scan at the moment. He seems to sort of get head injuries every other game. Botman's injury, I think, has set us back a lot. I think we needed a partner for him, and the fact that we didn't get that in, and now he's gone down, has left us really short at the back. Dan Burn going down, Matty Target's gone down. We're really, really stretched at the back, and I think another centre half kind of just helps shore that up a little bit. It has to be someone, I think, long term though. That can't be a young player. That has to be someone with a lot of potential. That needs to be effectively our first choice centre half in one or two years, if not straight away. Third position for me is a tough one because we've got players there that will play in a number of positions. Right wing to me, yeah, potentially, but I'd say maybe a central midfielder again. But then you're going in. Well, look, you've got Tonali coming back in 7 months or whatever, how long he's out for. You've got Miley coming through in that sort of area. You've got Bruno already. You've got Joe Willock or Joe Linton that can play there. I'm a little bit worried that if we start buying someone now because someone's out, then it's going to cause issues down the line. And I think you're probably right in that a right winger is someone who can be that attacker. But to me, I would probably try and fill that role with like the striker come right winger. That then fills both of those roles together. And that way you're not really stretching the bond of the players that are already in those positions that may be coming back before the end of the season. To me, yeah, another central midfielder, or even another goalkeeper if we get rid of a couple of those keepers and try and sign someone to be the long-term Pope replacement.
Yeah, now that would actually make sense as well. There is one player that Eddie has talked about again in some of his press conference when asked about this, and that is recalling Yankuba Minta from Feyenoord, I believe he's at.
Yeah.
He's had a cracking starter. He's a career over there. He is out injured at the moment, but it's nothing too major. I think he's just missing a few games.
So bring back another player that'll sit on the bench injured. It's like, yeah, awesome.
But he is young. He's hungry. He
Yeah.
knows where the goal is. He can assist a few as well. But he is crucially a right winger and play as a striker as well. But best of all, he wouldn't cost us anything either.
Yeah.
Because he's already our player. So that is potentially an option there. The only thing about recalling anyone from loan is if he's not going to get the game time, you're then potentially stalling his career, which we kind of seen with Garang Kwal up in Scotland. Would you, depending on how finances go in January, and if the right player isn't available and we do recall him, would you be okay with that? Or would you say, no, look, just keep him out on loan, let him get the game time he needs because we can't promise him right here?
I would prefer not because he seems to be getting plenty of game time. He's had Champions League games for them in the time he's been there already. He's scoring goals. He's playing well. He's developing well. I don't want to say, right, well, look, we need a player right now, so we'll bring him in. He gets 2 or 3 games, and then suddenly he's on the bench because everyone else is fit. This season was all about player development for him, and I think the long-term future for that player needs to be outweighing the immediate injury crisis for us, because I think if you manage the situation well with him, I think you've got an absolutely cracking player on your hands. If you start messing about, it could set him back, and we don't want that. So, I mean, that was obviously the big worry that we all had with Miley going down with glandular fever was how long is he going to be out? What's this going to do to his like injuries? And is he going to come back? And is he going to miss out on all that development time and not be the same player? It is things that you have to consider. If you're going down that youth development road, you need to commit to that youth development road, and not panic. And I think that's the key for me is don't panic. We'll get through this. We don't need to start jeopardizing the long-term future plans for some of our players. I'm sure we'll find somebody out there that will come in and do a job, even if it's a loan. Even if it's a loan.
Yeah, loan deals will be perfect because, like I say, we've got players returning back. Anderson, he shouldn't be too long from injuries after the new year. Players who can actually play in other positions, like you said. Eddie loves versatility, and that is something that will be addressed in January. I can't see the January transfer window being anything like it was in Eddie's first season, when we went out and got Target, Bruno, Byrne, Chris Wood. There is a fifth one there, but I can't remember who now. That's really annoyed me, that.
Trippier?
Trips. Yeah, Trips was the first one through the door. How did I forget Trips?
Yeah.
That's sorry, Trips. But yeah, I don't expect to be a window like that one, but I do expect to be a bit more active than the last one where we just went out and got Anthony Gordon. And we also got Harrison Ashby, who to me has just been the strangest signing of Eddie's tenure so far. I don't see why we done that. Then we brought him in, had a good preseason, then sent him out on loan. He's at Swansea, but he's doing quite well there. Especially when we then go and sign Tino Livramento as well. That to me was a strange one.
I think the Livramento deal wasn't on the table. I think they got a chance to sign him, and it was too good an opportunity to turn down. I firmly believe that it was not on their radar, and then they managed to get offered this player that they thought, oh, hang on a bit, yeah, no, this is way better than Harrison Ashby. We need to get him in now while he's still available before he goes elsewhere. Maybe long term, it's just like, look, Harrison Ashby comes in next season after a season on loan, gets some more game time. I don't know how he's doing on loan. I haven't really heard many updates, but
he scored a few. He's got the odd assist as well.
So look, maybe he comes back. Maybe he comes back fitter, stronger, hungrier. He knows what it's like to play regular week in, week out football. And maybe we just stick Trippier on the left, or maybe he starts dropping some game time because he's starting to get older, but you still want him around the squad. We don't know. I don't know. You don't know. I'm sure Eddie Howe has a plan. Let's wait and see.
Yep, absolutely. And on that note, we will finish this podcast right here. It's been an eventful one. We've covered a lot of topics, but let us know down in the comments below what areas of improvement you think we should target in January. And if there is any players in that list, realistic players it is, put them down there as well. We'll try and reply to as many comments as we possibly can. And again, if you don't already, please subscribe to this channel. We are so close to 1,500 subscribers. We would love to get that before the January transfer window opens. So again, if you don't already, hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell, as our next podcast will be a preview of the up-and-coming Chelsea game. That should be out on Thursday. I believe it is Lee and can't remember who else is on that one, but keep an eye for that. Hit that notification bell so you get notified when that one goes live sometime on Thursday. But thanks very much for joining me, Mark. We will leave that there. I will let you go and enjoy some aircon, get a nice cold drink. Summertime is well on its way here in Queensland and Australia. Sure. I'm going to go and get myself another beer. Thank you very much, and I will see you.
Pleasure as always. Take it easy, mate.
Cheers, mate.